welcome back. This is Santa Cruz Neighbors Meeting on May 30th, and we are covering some different things that happen in neighborhoods with houses and neighbors. And we're not going through crime prevention yet. So I should introduce Jenna Wilson is here also from the city. And she is a code enforcement person. I'm a code compliance specialist. I knew there was a fancy name. And say the name again. Jenna Wilson. Jenna. And Jenna and I have worked together over the years several times, and always come out successful with. Not always. Some projects are ongoing. They take longer than others. So we are working together off and on, but she's handing out some information that are pamphlets on the things that they actually look for in a neighborhood. So, and Jenna, oh, do you want me to go first? We talked about CRISP in our last meeting. It's the reporting portal, I'll say, for the city. And it's all yours.
Okay. Well, hi, I'm Jenna Wilson. I'm a code compliance specialist with the city of Santa Cruz. I've been doing this for 5 years. Prior to that, I worked with the police department for 10 years with Carter, mainly working downtown on the mall. So I'm very familiar with town. I'm here to speak with Deborah about things that are going on in your neighborhood. Our primary job is to enforce violations of all different codes on private property. So anything from building code, plumbing code, mechanical, health and safety code, municipal code, lots of codes. So we're here for you when something goes awry in your neighborhood and you've got a neighbor that is DIY handy, and I'm gonna put in a bathroom, I'm gonna put on a second story, I'm gonna do who knows what because I learned it on YouTube. We're the people that you call. Not always the most popular people, unfortunately. I don't always get greeted with warmth and a smile, but we're here to help that. We also monitor the rentals within the city. We have 2 dedicated rental inspectors, and all they do all the time is watch rentals. And they look for a very long list of violations that we provide to the property owners. So I do code enforcement. I try and stay away from the rental inspection if I can help myself. So I'm the person that shows up when you call for the most part. We take our complaints via the CRISP system as the preferred method. We
Under the property code violation.
Yes. And that's the one.
And we kind of went over CRISP on our last meeting, but basically you drop a pin in where your location is that you want to report. And then you can send photos and you can add comments and your name, which will be kept private. I want you all to really know that they protect you from reporting until possibly it goes to a court situation, but they will still protect you. And you probably will not have to be going to court at all because they will have seen the violations by then.
Yes. And I can tell you, in the 5 years I've been here, I've never had to go to court, which I'm thankful for. There's very few instances where that actually happens when it gets to that point. So I'm thankful for that. But we do keep all your information confidential. If someone were to request records, we redact all your information. Like we're in support of you. If there's a problem, we want you to report it. We don't want to be afraid of retaliation from your neighbors or from wherever you're reporting things. So we do a variety of things. Construction without permit is probably one of our biggest concerns, along with substandard housing. CCSC, we've got people living in closets, we got people living in bathtubs. It's ridiculous, stuff that we find, and it's everywhere. I personally, I had impact It's my case. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Chinese food restaurant. They're on Water Street. They had,
Where Adolph's used
where
to be.
Adolph's used to be, yes. Much better, it was much better with Adolph. They unfortunately had their entire staff living in a converted office in the back of the property. That was not meant for people to be living in. They were living in old refrigerator units. They were living in closets. They were living everywhere. And that's where code enforcement comes into help. The building was red tagged, the people were relocated. They were offered support, especially those people were not English speaking. We got interpreters for them, and we did a whole lot of things for them to help them move on from that living situation. So that's what we're here to do. We really want to help people in the community. We do work occasionally with adult protective services, with child protective services. We work with the police department frequently. Fire prevention, our buddies, we go out with them all the time. Yes. Things that we don't handle though, just so you're aware. Thank goodness, I'm happy about it. We don't do bugs. No bed bugs, no mosquitoes, no infestations. We leave that all to the county and we're fine with that. We don't deal with any vehicles parked on the street. That would be the police department. There you go. I'm trying to think what else we don't deal with, unfortunately. Sewage, there is an environmental compliance division of the city. Sewage leaks both from RVs or on private property. We don't deal with trespassing issues necessarily, but there is a crossover between issues that come from people trespassing and some more unhoused community that do go onto private property, and we help assist people getting those things cleaned up, getting a trespass letter for their property if need be, trying to get them, you know, hit the police department so that they can work together to solve that, so that it doesn't keep continuing. And does anyone have any questions for me?
I do. I'm curious so the day before this eviction. As it relates to getting information to the landlord, what happens after that? If there's a code violation and the landlords are notified, if they have tenants that are experiencing students?
So we would go out, say we go on a rental inspection and we find that there's X, Y, and Z that needs to be fixed. We are going to send a notice to the property owner, not to the kids that live there, but to the actual property owner saying, these are the deficiencies we found, and we give them a timeline to fix it. If they don't fix it, then we start with a different line of enforcement that becomes more and more serious as time goes on and has higher penalties. So we try and work with people as much as we can. We try to be flexible. We understand that contractors are in high demand right now. All the trades people are hard to get. It's hard to get a designer. It's hard to get a contractor. And we work with people with that. We're kind of like the hand holder. Once you have a complaint against you, we will be there with you, whether you like it or not, all the way through the process to the very end. Get your permit files. Well, we try anyway. So you'd be stuck with me. But CRISP is our preferred method of receiving complaints. We do have a line on here, a phone line. It's currently not a live phone line. You need your recording. So if you leave a recording with the pertinent information, your name, what you're reporting, where it's at, things of that nature, we will call you back. We're there 5 days a week. We just took on mobile food vending as part of our duties. So you'll see us actually downtown and on Beach Street doing different things, not in the office as much, but we are always here for these types of things. We have levels of priority that we go off of. Level 1 being the most serious, a building collapse, a fire, something catastrophic. Level 2 can be some similar items, but not necessarily the building's going to fall over tonight. It might fall over tomorrow. So that's level 2. Level 3 is where we get the most substandard housing. Your neighbor builds a fence that's 10 feet tall. We don't like that. They want to park their car on the middle of their lawn. We don't like that either. There's a long list of items that we will go out. And right now, unfortunately, I'm the only one. We are hiring. If you know of anybody. So we are a little backlog, to be totally honest with you, but we are working with all these complaints. Question?
I did. What is is there, I guess is the question, follow up with the people who are reporting code violations, particularly significant ones, like unpermitted construction?
So we will follow up. I don't know if it says in here if it gives you a spot where you can put if you want to follow up.
I believe there is a
Yeah.
question.
There is. I think that in a perfect world, this system should auto-generate when we put out certain notifications to the property owners. It should be sending you an email, but I'm not sure if it's still doing.
Okay, because from my, this is just my perspective, and I've lived in town over 35 years now, that's sort of been the missing element in all of this. And then sometimes it's not directed at you. Sometimes staff kind of dropped the ball, and then things would go on and on and on, and then you never knew if it was being dealt with or not. So I would just offer this as a suggestion, and I get it that you're understaffed and this might have to wait, but I think a really important part of all of these processes when we're giving input or asking for assistance, that there be some kind of closure for a follow-up.
Yes.
There can't be closure.
Good.
Sometimes you can't.
Sometimes there can be closure.
Yeah,
but-
or it isn't unlawful,
Yeah.
whatever, and then you just say, hey, look, it's cool, and we're done.
Thank you. I will definitely take that into consideration. We really try and reach back out to the people that have lots of complaints and let them know what's going on, because most of the things we handle, they're not taken care of in a day or week.
Right.
A lot of these are long-term problems.
That's my point.
And I have cases that I inherited when I started working there that are 10 years old, that are still going. And it doesn't look like progress, but compared to when I started, it's progress. So it does take time, and I appreciate that. So I will definitely pick up.
May I ask your name again?
My name is Jenna.
Thank you.
And I will also say that when a neighborhood gets involved, it does help her job to move along. And she will then also go back to that neighborhood and say, this is what's happening now, and keep in touch. And I know Robert has worked on one of these situations. I have worked also on a house in my neighborhood, and it really does take the persistence, I think, of the neighbors to keep the ball kind of moving forward. I believe your department has some new tools that weren't really available before, and that is threatening to go to court if it comes to that down the line.
So we have, the different type of enforcement that it's been around for a long time, but we haven't really used. So it was used recently on a case where a person was taken to court. Their property was taken away from them, but the control of their property was handed over to another person to be able to clean up their property. And in the end, they have to pay for it. And they sold off their property. They sold off all of their property to pay for it. But the violation is taken care of, and the person is living comfortably elsewhere and not in the city limits. So it works, but it is a long process.
It's a very long
Several
process.
years for that to come to fruition. And I have other cases where, so I get all the hoarder cases. For whatever reason, I am the hoarder queen. I get them all, and I go in some very terrible places, and people go, "Have you seen the show Hoarders?" And I'm like, "I can smell it when you say that word." So those cases are very, very complicated, and a lot of times people have a lot of emotional attachment. There's a mental health issues, and so we try and hook them up with services. We try and send people over to APS or senior network services or places like that to try and get them help, but they don't always want it. So it's it's push and shove. We try to be as nice as we can to gain compliance, but sometimes we have to take that extra step and start more strenuous enforcement, which doesn't always work for us, but we try to go at it at both angles. We try and get compliance the easiest way that we can, the least painful for the person that we're going out to your house. Because I know if I come to your house, I'm going to cost you money for whatever reason, whatever happened there that is broken or not supposed to be there, it's going to cost you money to fix it.
Well, I will just positive feedback. We had a order in our neighborhood too, and it took a very long time to mitigate it, and what kind of got the ball rolling though was the neighbors finally got together and did a petition because there were rats and this unhealthy disgusting. There were health and safety issues. But at that time it was Jacob Rodriguez who worked on that particular case, and it did take a really long time, but that was handled brilliantly because it was a mental health issue. That was part of that particular situation, and Always a positive outcome, I think, for everybody.
I'd like to see, putting stuff on sidewalks.
So
Want to talk about that?
once it is on the sidewalk and it's no longer on private property, we would call out sanitation to get that. Unless we can see somebody that's taking it out of their house and putting it on the sidewalk, I personally, code compliance, we can't do anything about it. That would go over to sanitation, or if it's someone that's chronically dumping, like let the police department know and they can go out and handle it. It's unfortunate that people are doing that everywhere. And I encourage you, I don't, there's a number here from Public Works to call if you see a couch or a desk or something like that, because working at the police department, I know where that's gonna end up. And we need to not have that go on. We need, those things need to be like.
Even though it's in front of somebody's house, it's free. You can't say that's their couch. Okay.
I know, as silly as that sounds, but if you see someone dragging it out, sure, I can call them and say, hey. But sanitation would be the one that. And they're very good about it.
So they would just pick it up and it's outside because it is an ordinance against that.
Yes, and sometimes they might cite, I don't know their policies exactly, but I have called them before when it's like a mattress sitting out in front of somebody's house and they just come get it. Because otherwise, you won't connect.
So Jenna, the brochure that you passed out, is that online under code enforcement on the city website?
I don't believe that it is, to be honest with you. I don't know how new this brochure is, but it's got our new,
It's not.
it's got SanFordCA.gov on it, so it's gotta be pretty new. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Recently, we had California that homes left empty and were for the years. We can see it. You've got that.
Yes.
Any update on that? Is there something that you're concerned with? House that's just empty 6, 8, 10 months a year.
We were concerned about it just for the enforcement aspect, because we're not about to go peek in everybody's windows and see if your house is actually empty. But I don't know what the actual, I don't know if there's progress to bring that forward again. I don't know where that one stands. Our advanced planning department would begin.
About the Cruz and similar. This we use some skeptical, so I.
Yes, they do.
In places, like,
Yes.
we live at the end of Middle Road, and just think I'm probably less part of the DNR. Constantly surrounded by campers that are either on our property or not, and they're not. It's really nothing to do. Except report it. So I get the neighbors riled up about it, because, oh, Jonathan, you got it, you report. So by the time you got 5, 6, 7 people reporting, then you finally get some action. And I get it, because you guys are busy, so you can't just jump up and remove every garbage pile. Whatever people want. But that seems to.
Do it, yeah. And it definitely does do it. And things like that where.
But the neighbors come together.
Yeah, when the neighbors come together, that definitely helps. And I mean, our system's not perfect, like your system, so something will come through and it'll get routed over to Public Works and it should go to us, or something that we handle will go the other way, vice versa. It happens all the time. Some of the things that come in, like campers or things that are more dangerous, we do have to coordinate with the police department to go out on those things. We don't generally, we're not armed. I do have a bulletproof vest in case the need arises, but I have nothing else. So if there's any kind of danger involved, we're going to use the police department, we're going to use some resources, and we're going to be a little more methodical about it. Unfortunately, with some of our unhoused population, we have to conduct it the same way. So, but keep calling. I promise you, we will get there. We will do it. We will do it. It might be routed around to all these different people, but we will get it.
Earlier about hearing back. I mean, there is an auto responder on the system.
Yeah.
With your emailing.
Mhm.
But then other than that, like there was this one chat that kept getting worse and worse, right down where all the kids go by and trailer home US and families were certainly worried. I think that was going on in the right. Sort of the logical part. And I think it took about 5 months for this thing to finally disappear. But there was never any response back. So I actually went down and talked to the Northwest staff about it, and they responded, "Oh, touched it." And not even, but just when we needed it, talking about it, this thing's still there. And we actually, had an instance where my son went down and the tent was kind of open and he peeked in. It was, man, there's nothing here. It's just mildew and garbage. It's not a garbage. It's going to be rats and who knows what.
Well, you can always report again or call the phone number.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, we have one more question for here.
Yeah, well, I just wondered, okay, so to get that right there, do I go on that internet site,
You go on the city's website,
city's website, and then what's this called, this property?
Chris,
Chris.
if you just put in Chris without the I,
Okay,
CRSP,
okay, thank you.
and you can report numerous things.
Okay.
Potholes.
Oh, yeah, they go to all the different departments. And we do work closely. I belong to the encampment assessment team, so I do work with the police department when encampments come up. Not a ton of them come up on private property. I will say they're mainly in our public spaces, but I am aware when the police department's doing cleanups, like I know when people are gonna be moving around. I'm into that and I can report those things directly to Carter Jones here and they will get taken care of. So I appreciate your persistence and your patience. Keep calm, yes.
Yeah,
Because it
and
will
I'm not
happen.
blaming anybody because I know it's really tough.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That's Jenna. And perfect segue to Lieutenant Carter Jones, who is now appointed as our community officer. Years ago, we used to have a community officer that would work with neighborhood issues and those types of things. And our chief of police reappointed Carter to be in that position. And I can't think of a more perfect person to be in that position. One thing, because she brought it up, I'm wondering if you could talk about letter of trespass. To start off, and then he's going to go into, because he was given the task of revamping our party house unruly gatherings ordinance, and he has completed that task, and that's why we're like here to kick it off again. And we're not starting from ground zero, but we're starting like at 50% to be prepared when these things happen. So go, Carter.
Thanks, Deb. Well, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for coming tonight. So to kind of kick things off, I'll start off with the trespass letter of authority. If you don't have one for your house or if you have a business, I highly recommend just going to the police department website, and down in the right-hand corner, there's a little link, and you can fill. We used to have you fill that in, like wet signature, hand deliver it, or fax it in. You can do everything online now. So highly recommend that. If you have friends that have businesses, it basically gives us the authority to be your agent or your representative while you're not home, while you're asleep, while you're away from your business. And then basically you're just signing that saying, yes, I don't want anybody loitering on my property without my permission.
So this is for business property.
It is for business, but it's also like if you have like vacant land, if you have other things, it's or if you go on vacation, there's also vacation request information. So if we can't get a hold of you, then we can act on your behalf. So super, super important.
Excuse me, what about if you are a resident and there are just a bunch of people that, for whatever reason, they just hang in front of your house, they're making noise and, sometimes they're drunk, so, and I don't know how to handle that, and I'm fine that I have called the police department. I know you guys don't have enough resources, and when somebody's, I guess, killing somebody, you want to attend to that, then, coming and attending to a bunch of
That's great.
civilized people.
Yeah, that's a great question. I equate our response much like the waiting room of an emergency room,
Yes.
right? So, I mean, I think that's the easiest way for everybody to understand. Sometimes you walk into the ER or urgent care and there's nobody in there. and you're gonna get your service, no matter if it's like, oh, I ripped the nail off my finger and I cut myself maybe on the mandolin when I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we'll see you right away. But it might be, the 4th of July weekend or something, and we have 10 people stacked up with broken arms and car crashes.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take us a few hours to get there. It might even, be 6 or 7, depending on how many calls start coming in. But it changes every day. Usually during the summer, it's a little bit busier because we typically on the weekends have about 60,000 people coming into the city. So our population here pretty much doubles. I'm sure you all know that with the traffic, you can't get anywhere during the summer. So just understand that it might be a little longer, but we also have, it's not our training season. We have special deployment teams that are in service on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays to help out with those calls for service.
Okay.
And a lot of it are opportunities too. We might be around the corner from your house, and even though the call threshold is something low, but it's like, oh, we can knock out that call in like a minute or two because we're right around the corner. We might grab that on the way to something else.
Okay, thank you.
So always be call. So here's kind of a background of the Trespass Letter Authority on the city website. So you can click on it and Jackie will send it in, and all that information's there. You just have to check the box at the bottom, and then you're good to go. Yeah, question.
I have a question to that, like, go back to that, our property has a gate, and person has access to the fire department. Is that the same for you? So when there is an emergency or there's stuff happening, property here and there, can't open. Do you?
If you're listed with the fire department, they'll come out.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
a good
to-
question.
yeah.
I don't know if we're listed, I mean, we have that. When we bought the house, it was on the.
Yeah, so they have access to all, it's called Knox blocks.
Yeah, there's a fire department box. Do we
So-
have to inform the fire department as well?
No, they'll come. When we arrive,
Okay.
we'll see what it is that we need, and they'll just call.
Because that's always a worry, but I'm like, oh, it's hard, people are gonna get in there.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, so not a problem.
Kartik, along this line, you may want to mention that the police department also offers vacation check. So you can fill out a form for that also.
And so that's whether you're on vacation for a weekend, a week, a month, whatever it is, like we'll schedule our officers to come by. So what happens is we'll log on, we'll have dispatch create details to come by your house, at certain times. So we'll check whether it's once a day. Things like that.
Can I add something? I'm so sorry that I forgot to tell you all about the compliance. We are reactive. We're not patrolling neighborhoods like the police department looking for things. So if you see something, you do have to report it to us. Even though your neighbor's house is just a train wreck, I can't do anything about it until I report it. So just to make that super clear.
And that includes complaints from us. Like I actually send some complaints to Jenna because they'll come across my desk, and because they don't fall. We actually had a conversation earlier today because the entertainment permits for bars and establishments that have DJs and live music. So if they apply for an entertainment permit, they come through the police department, and then they're ours. But if they're doing entertainment before they have a permit, it falls under our house.
Yeah.
So we talk all the time about houses, safety, like, hey, can you come with us on the inspection and all kinds of stuff. We're talking all the time about stuff. So then kind of segueing from the Trespass Letter of Authority into kind of just like a safety, overall safety, how to make your house safer, how to make your area more secure. The two big things are lighting and cameras. We had a great case come across our desk earlier today. That was a camera from somebody's house, and they got their $1,700 bike stolen from their front porch. It was chained up to a big post on their house, right at the corner of their deck. Somebody jumped over, stole it. One of our community service officers took the report, sends out the video to the department, and lo and behold, there's the person that we all know from multiple contacts. And we know that person because he's very distinct, has distinct tattoos, despite having had on a hood up, like we can tell exactly who it is. So now we're gonna forward that case over to the DA's office, and proceed felony charges for stealing the bike for, right, that was locked up inside the house. So, so cameras, although you might not catch everybody every time, and raccoons might kick them off, you know, as they're jumping around the house, looking at the garbage containers and things like that. Cameras are worth their weight in gold, to really make sure your house is secure. A lot of them are app-based now, so you could be on vacation, sending yourself in Maui and have your Ring camera go off, or have, you know, another camera go off, and you can look at it and be like, oh, it's just my, you know, my cat or my house sitter, you know, whatever. We get calls often from people that are on vacation or out of town. They're like, hey, there's something creeping around my backyard. So highly recommend cameras. Motion activated lighting. That's another big one. So people don't think that, a lot of people do the ones right in their driveway, and you creep across, and then it's like boom, right away it turns on, and you can hear the click in the light. There's a lot better delayed ones now that you can buy. They're super cheap. They used to be like $200-300 for a pair of lights. They're as cheap as like $20 now for a really nice pair of lights. They have lights linked to cameras now, you name it. And then the other thing I really wanted to touch on before I get into party houses is creating opportunities for criminals, right? Like this bike theft I was just talking about, that happened because our criminal was walking down the street, and you see him on video turn and see the e-bike in the front yard. So if the e-bike was kept behind a fence in the backyard, that crime of opportunity would have never happened. The same thing goes for like things you have on your front porch, things you have in your car. Don't leave anything out that would lead someone. It's like bait when you're fishing. Like if they see something shiny, they're going to direct their attention into your vehicle and then be like, oh, well, what else is in there? And then is it worth breaking out a window to get things like that? So try and minimize the crimes of opportunity. And to you might be like, oh, it's just my car charger. It's just like a $5 bill. It's really not that big of a deal. But to someone else, like they value that. That's worth breaking out your window. And then one of the other things I wanted to touch on was our wonderful loud and unruly gathering program. So a loud and unruly gathering is defined as a party with any more than 2 to 3 people. That is so loud and obnoxious that you can hear it from a house. That's just to the level where it would be normally shock assessors of an ordinary. So typically, I don't know that we've ever written a loud and unruly citation for a party of 2 people. Typically, it's the last one we had 3 weeks ago was a party of about 350. And you know, just streaming out of the house, beer cans all over the front yard, things like that. So we've retrained all our younger staff. We had a huge lull in loud and unruly parties and gatherings over COVID because there really weren't. The program over the years has been so successful that I went back and looked at every single case Leo had. And the way that it works is you get warned, you get fined as the resident, and on the 3rd fine, it goes to the landlord of the property. And our program has been so successful, it actually had never gone to the landlord. The fines that add up to, I think it's $1,500 on the 3rd fine, had been successful, where the landlord has then kicked the residents out or changed. There might have been another batch of not so great tenants. But we have never gone to a 4th violation where we've actually needed to fine the landlord.
You haven't. But the neighbors have.
I was just gonna say.
The neighbors have contacted the landlords, and the neighbors actually have been successful taking the landlords to court. So You haven't had to, but.
Good to know. Good to know. And those are the nuisance houses that damage a whole neighborhood. So the program is now back up and running. We issued our first citation, like I said, a few weeks ago. And we fully anticipate over the next 2 weeks as UCSC graduates that we're going to be dishing out a lot more loud and early citations. And then you'll see them back up on the website, since we only have one house right now that has a violation. You'll start seeing those pop up now on the website and the list of ugly houses. And we've had a few people call in and say, hey, keep an eye out. You know, this house has been a problem. So please keep an eye out for it, like as things come up. So
Carter, is the first call always just a warning?
well, it's a warning and the form gets handed out in the citation. So we call it a warning. They're still getting cited. They're just getting the full sheet of this will go, you know, this is going to carry on. This isn't
But
just
there's no fine.
that is up to the officer's discretion. So we often will find like the typical like party citation and then issue the loud and unruly on the first offense. But then after that, we'll issue citations because the loud and unruly provision doesn't prohibit us from writing a citation for just an unruly gathering. So we can still do things like that. We oftentimes cite and arrest kids in the front yard for drinking, littering, and things like that. But the specific loud and unruly, we usually reserve for them. We'll go down and just typical protocols, issue the violation notice first, and then cite the second, third, and so on.
For a long time, the police department was strongly encouraging residents to actually sign the citations. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because what I'm hearing you say is that the police officers will do that. And in the past, that hasn't always been the case. And so residents have had to go and sometimes all the way to court to deal with this stuff. So is there a change in the police department in terms of how they're approaching this, or?
So two big changes, like we have body worn cameras now. So like everything's on video, where we used to like pull out our phones and film stuff, or like get out of our car and turn the car camera toward the front of the house. We will still ask for someone to sign a citation if we get there
And it's quiet.
and it's quiet. Let's say we're in that triage situation where you call and an hour and a half goes by and we're finally getting to it. And now they've all decided to go party downtown. They left,
Or they heard on the police van that you're coming,
right?
which is another issue, but you can't control that, obviously. But no, I just want to make sure I understand the process.
Yeah, so
That's helpful.
I'll expand it a little bit. So then if you're adamant, you say, no, I want them cited. And we're not seeing any evidence of that happening.
You're not witnessing it.
We're not witnessing it. Then we will ask you, hey, like I'm not seeing it. I can facilitate a citizen's arrest, but I need you to sign as the arresting party because you're the one that witnessed it. And the same goes for like any misdemeanor offense, not committed in our presence. So let's say Deb steals a hydrangea out of your front yard, and she
Again.
I know.
again, and let's say she walks down the street, she hides the hydrangea somewhere, and then she's walking down the street back. We arrive, and you're like, no, there's Deb. She stole it. I saw her do it. Okay, and that's great. I have no proof that Deb took it, and you're like, no, I witnessed it, and it's on my camera from my house. I'm willing to sign it trust terms because it's a misdemeanor that wasn't committed in our presence. Like we asked you to be, because it won't be valid. Felonies, on the other hand, all bets are on.
So,
No, I
so
just
I
wanted
want
a clarification, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to add to that because we're going to talk about a witness log, but it's really critical for neighbors if they are having a problem with the house to document. And a lot of ways to document are video and pictures and audio. And those are objective witnesses. Those don't have an emotion or that I got woken up at 3 a.m. That's just something that happens. That is great evidence. And if you do have to sign that citation, I would highly request that you either have a log of what has happened with this past house, or the fact that you have audio or video of what has happened with this house. Because if they do, we've even had them, the call goes out to the police department, the kids or whoever's having the party hears that on the radio because they've got a scanner. They shut down the party and the guys are knocking on the door and there's nothing happening and they're not answering the door. So there's where your documentation really works. So.
And if you have a problem in the house, I highly recommend, do you mind holding up your notebook so everybody can see it? Go buy one of these at like Target, Walmart somewhere, and just create, or have a witness log, just like this. Like that has. And you start making a note, date, a time, what you saw, where it took place, everything relevant. And it's that later is going to be worth its weight in gold when you go to court and you say, listen, Your Honor or Commissioner, I have 27 different instances where this took place. And then the person gets up and they say, no, that's not possible. And then you say, oh yeah, it is. And not only do I have it logged here, I will go through all the pictures and videos in my phone, and I have my neighbor on the other side who's a witness. You know, so and then you have everything, because it's not just what you saw, it's what you can prove in court. And documentation, and if you come all prepared with all this stuff, you have instant credibility with the commissioner or the judge, and they're going to look at you and say like, yeah, this person's not making it up. They've got all this proof to back it up. So it's not just a neighbor versus neighbor situation. It all comes down to the documentation.
And I will confirm what you're saying. We went 3 times we had to go to court, and we went your time just because we had exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So.
And you build credibility too, because the next time you're back, you already have credibility with and usually if it's not too long going by, it's the same judge sitting in the same department, which is either the civil division or misdemeanor division that you're going to talk in front of. They're like, oh, I remember, you know, and that's so you have,
It helps.
it definitely helps.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So just listening, I'm realizing that this is about the noise. So there is this situation that there is a house that like from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. lots of cars stop by and most of them are quiet. And then there are those who have this super kind of a muffler or their stereo, you know, I'm here to pick up my truck, you know, so they're announcing it. You know. So if you suspect that there is, I mean, it's not a 7-Eleven, so I mean, I assume that there is somebody selling something, you know, so that if that is the case, how do you handle that? You know, I mean, we keep a log meticulously, license plate number. Sometimes the front license plate number is different than the rear license plate
Red
number.
That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or it's higher, you know,
So you've just mentioned all these reasons that give us probable cause to stop a vehicle.
yeah.
And then oftentimes, like that's going to lead to its own thing.
But how do you approach that? Because if I approach this thing, I suspect that there is drug trafficking, you know, drug selling going on, and here is what I done. And they said, well, we need a solid evidence. I said, well, what do you consider a solid evidence? License plate number, every 5
You
minutes.
make an officer your best friend.
No, I
And you-
know. I actually, we have done that.
Yes.
In the city, it seems to be different because when I lived in the mountains, we did that with the Santa Cruz County Sheriff Department for 9 months. That's what we did. Among 7 trusted neighbors. And then over 11 months, they were able to put 3 drug houses in my neighborhood. But in 2, it was more than a full-time job.
Yep.
Among, you know, the 7 of us. But in the city, it seems to be, even with the Santa Cruz County, it was like they had to get a warrant. And they often said, we don't want to get sued if we get a warrant and there is nothing going on there, you know, kind of thing. If somebody was mentioning like, you can peek into the people's house to see if they're living there, you know. So in city, it seems to be a little bit different. Can you please advise, how do we approach it? What do we do about it?
Yeah, we'll start fishing, right? Like,
Okay.
so, you let us know an address, and specifically not just calling dispatch and being like, hey, can you look at this drug house? Because the patrol officer on that day is gonna drive by, and if there's nothing suspicious out in front of the house.
Yeah.
Or overtly suspicious, they're just they'll maybe look and be like, oh, what's the history for the residents? Maybe run a plate, and if nothing's going on, I'm just gonna leave.
Okay,
Close it out. So if you really think that something's going on there, send it to Deb, send it to me, and say, hey, you know, I really think this is a drug house. This is what's going on. Here's some of the evidence I have. Here's some of the license plates. Cars come and going at, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And we can make that, okay, let's make it a project. Let's find out. So then we'll log that address. I'll specifically kind of pick the units that work on that side of town. And
okay,
then send all that information to them and say, hey, like, this looks like there's an issue going on with this house. Can you go hit it, start running plates, kind of find out what's going on? I'll pull the residential info. I'll look at the premise history for it, find out who lives there, find out whose bills are going there. And then we can start figuring out if those people are on probation, because you don't need a warrant oftentimes.
you do.
No,
Okay.
all you need is probable cause to get in the house. A lot of times judges have put people on probation
Okay, good.
with search terms, not to possess stolen property, drugs, things like that. So then that's our key to the house,
Okay,
or to search their car if they leave their house. So there's plenty of things that we can do to find out. Or let's say we go down that road and we find out that they're college students and they all work jobs downtown and they all work at bars. So they're all like bartenders and wait staff till 2, 3.
yeah.
But we'll be able to, I'm just giving you 2 different
Yeah,
examples.
I know, and
like
I
one
appreciate
versus the
that,
other.
because this is a mixed bag of cars. You see high-end cars, and then you see the low-end cars. And, I have gotten a lot of help from that. I've been involved in the neighborhood watch program for 15 years, and, so it seems to be the high-end ones are coming to pick up the truck, the low-end are the seller. They
Yeah.
pick up and sell. They're a distributor. These are all mine.
Yeah, and we'll be able to dig into those things.
But you guys know a lot more than I do. So you're saying that I should put everything together and then just send it over?
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Absolutely. And then we'll start digging.
Thank you.
Pivoting slightly, but when I go to bed at night, I worry about my vehicle because about 3 weeks ago, my fiance had her catalytic converter stolen. And every time we leave the car unlocked in the Seabright area, it's getting run through. I'm just curious what the process is for prevention on that.
So, yeah, the catalytic converter thing is tough because we're seeing a lot of these crews come over. Like almost none of these are local crews. So
Okay.
they'll come over from San Jose, like from Stockton, from the Central Valley, and they'll come in specifically just like driving down the street, usually places that are an easy thoroughfare out to the freeway. And they'll just get out of their cars, chop catalytic converters, go to the next street over, go to the next street over.
Took them 3 minutes.
Yeah, and we'll see, they have battery powered like sawzalls and they just roll under cars, with the metal blade, and they're out in like fruits flat.
What I did notice, we had a camera from the neighbor and they had a lift light on. So I think they were using it 2 o'clock in the morning to avoid getting pulled over.
Yes. And we've gotten into pursuits.
Yeah.
With cars that we've handed off to the highway patrol, and like they've chased people all the way up 80 into
Yeah.
Oakland and arrested them. So I mean, it's and we've seen huge spikes. Like I think February we had like 40, I think some odd 30 or 40 catalytic converter thefts, and then one of them got arrested that was leaving town. And then next thing you know, the next month we have 2. So it's so it just ebbs and flows. We haven't seen as many lately. There's been like sporadically one here, one there, but not this rash that we saw when people. So.
And there, a few years ago, they did catch, I mean, it was prolific all over town, and they ended up catching those guys. And I don't know if it, this is where neighbors are invaluable. I'm now in the habit of, before I go to bed, I open my front door and look out and see what's going on in the street or over at the park. It's invaluable because we've had other neighbors realize that, oh, that's not my neighbor in their driveway, that's somebody else. And they immediately make that phone call. It makes all the difference in the world. So and your neighbors are up at different times of the night too. We had a whole neighborhood where they actually started doing a foot patrol because I can't sleep at 2 a.m. So I'm going to go out. Anybody else want to go out with me? And they actually did that for a while, which was pretty amazing. Yeah.
On this catalytic converter thing, do some of these arrests of the perpetrators get back to whoever they're
Selling
this
to.
stuff to get money?
Yes or no, the highway patrol has a task force that has gone and arrested several owners of scrap yards because they'll find like a pile of catalytic converters in the back corner of the scrap yard and things like that. So yeah, there are quite a few that have them around the state. So they've made it they've done a stranglehold on like the precious metal and refining those things.
Yeah, if they can't sell it, they're not gonna do it.
Exactly. But I mean, some people are just shipping them overseas, so you name it. If there's a market for it, they're going to find a way. So, so just the last thing I want to touch on was that second part of the question was kind of auto burglary tips. And like, it's not just like I mentioned, smashing windows. We've seen a trend of people literally just walking through neighborhoods, like opening door handles, and they'll just go through them, just flip them, pull them, just walk down the street. And as soon as it's like, they one opens, then they'll just go in and rummage through everything in there, and just look for something. And they'll do it in like 30 seconds flat and then out. Because if they can open the door, there's no alarm on the car. So they're going to have as much time as they need to be in there. So make sure your car's locked before you go to bed every night, like go out visually watch, like watch it. And then, like I said before, make sure those things aren't in view. Because oftentimes someone will steal $5 and it costs you $150 or whatever your deductible is to get one fixed.
So on our website, Santa Cruz Neighbors under crime prevention, we have different things that we worked out with the police department: residential burglary prevention tips, auto burglary prevention tips, vehicle theft prevention tips. I want to touch on that because lately we seem to have vehicle thefts. And then we also, I haven't put it up yet, but I will put it under crime prevention. We have a home security survey where you can go around your house and kind of check off because maybe you're not really thinking of everything. So, vehicle thefts.
To touch on vehicle thefts. Don't leave your spare keys in your car. It sounds really dumb, but a lot of the thefts are people that leave their car unlocked. And someone will go by and start pulling handles. And as they're fishing through the car, they'll find a spare key in like the center console. And then, oh, lo and behold. And then we'll get a call being like, oh yeah, no, I have all the sets of my car keys right here. And they don't. Another one is we get a lot of stolen cars when people go jogging on the beach or go surfing somewhere, and someone will be watching. And here goes Deb again coming by after I take my car key and stick it in a magnet or like leave it resting on a tire, and then she comes by and is like, "Oh, sweet, I got a new Toyota Tacoma. I'm on." So don't use the magnets. Like go get a key that's waterproof or something, or a key fob, put it in a Ziploc bag. And then
How good are the lock boxes?
they're fine if you.
Lock back of the truck.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. People usually can't get into those. But I've seen people put a magnet on the back of the lockbox and put the whole lockbox like up in their wheel well. Well, then someone's just gonna steal the lockbox. Remember what your car looks like. Take the lockbox home, go to their campsite, spend time smashing it open, and next time they see your car, they're gonna take it. So just thinking about those things and where you park, try to park in a lighted area. If you have an older car, we're seeing a lot of Hondas. They're called bump keys, where the keys are like shaved down, and all you have to do is put it in and jiggle it around and start turning the ignition, and those bump keys will basically engage all the pins. And those are pretty easy to steal. So a lot of the older Toyotas, older Hondas, like late 80s, 90s models, you see those getting stolen pretty often. They're kind of our highest on the list. But most of them are keys that are taken, or if someone just runs into like 7-Eleven to grab something and they leave their car. Like don't expect your car's going to be there when you get back. Or, oh, I need to go warm up my car. I'm going to run back in and get something. And then their car runs into another driveway. Those are very typical things we see.
And report it immediately, because they have a daily list in the whole Bay Area that gets put on this list. And we have certain officers are really good at finding vehicles in the town and looking around. So,
and we have just like Winnie the Pooh, who has his honey pot. Like we have areas where we know like these vehicles end up typically more than other things. So just a few, but just be aware. And one thing I always try to end with is trust your instincts. You don't feel like something's right. You feel nervous, you feel like someone's following you. They probably are. So go to a more lit area, go where some other people are, circle the block, be safe. But really trust your instincts. If that voice is telling you like, hey, watch out, really start listening to it. So, any other questions?
as far as burglaries go, I am helping a neighborhood work with a burglary case, and we are following this burglar through court. So at some point in time in a future meeting, we will go down that path and tell that story. It's my understanding, and I don't know, maybe you can back this up, that house burglaries are kind of more rare than they used to be. So when something like this happens, which we had 4 burglaries in our neighborhood within a very short period of time, it was the neighbors that brought the whole story together. And that's one of the main reasons, and Santa Cruz PD putting the pieces together with the neighbors and realizing who it was. So now we are following them through court. In one of our future meetings, we'll be going through what it's like to call 911, how to give descriptions, all those things, and talk about even the court process. We don't want that to be scary for you. If you do have to go through a court process, Santa Cruz Neighbors has sat through a few court processes, and we can certainly help you with that. But yeah, just mostly what I want to say also about code enforcement, when those things come up with problem houses, it's really for the safety of the person that's living in that house and for your safety. All the code enforcement premises, I believe, really are, state laws that should be followed, and it's really for your health and safety. So,
if I can touch on that, because some of these code things are confidential.
Yeah.
So Jenna can't talk about them, but I can. So a lot of these things are like things that are their structural issues, like walls that have rotted away, beams that are completely disintegrated, and maybe there's concrete, that's not really being held up by anything. Where literally, someone makes a mistake and drives over it or puts a little weight on it, or we have an earthquake, God forbid, or like really bad electrical issues. We've gone on code enforcement cases together where I see something and by no means I'm a contractor. And I'm like, wow, that's wrong. And it just looks like spaghetti wired together. And it's, and just things like that where, and these places will be rented. Like these places, people are living there just thinking that everything's okay. So, a lot of people think code enforcement, oh, they're just out to get me. And it's like, no, it's not the case. You understood what code enforcement dealt with on a daily basis. It's amazing what tries to get passed on as a rental and as a safe place to live. So,
It is about health and safety. I believe that. And we've had students that have actually moved into residences that were not good situations. And the neighbors ended up actually working with the students and backing up the students in that case, which also went to court. But it is about health and safety.
But it's also, Deborah, I think, I speak from my own experience. It's also about the quality of your life. You should not be subjected, we all have a constitutional rights to the peaceful enjoyment of our home. And we all work all day long and you come home, and when we are subjected to noise pollution, craziness, it's like, I didn't ask for this, so it's a quality of life also important, for us.
And that quote is actually written into the unruly gatherings ordinance.
Thank you.
So, anyway, that concludes our meeting for this
Thank you.
evening. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Parker Jones. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Deborah.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Yes.